Welcome back to PowerShell Garage. In our last episode, we got our LQ4's oiling system all primed up, and we are going to continue today with the valve covers and some of the accessories for the front. Thanks for watching.
All right, well, last up for this, for now at least, just gonna get these valve covers on. I'm just gonna take some of this oil that was pumped up through and put a little bit of oil in this O-ring. I don't know if you're supposed to do that or not. I'm sure someone out there is commenting, saying that.
You idiot!
Oh, damn it. Idiots.
It's gonna fail in the first 50 miles.
I mean, to me, it's a rubber O-ring, so I'm gonna get it clean. I know that contradicts what I've done on the rest of the engine, where I use brake clean to clean the gasket surface before I put the seal on. And those are essentially O-rings as well. But there's no reason to point that out. It's what it is. All right, so that's lubed up. This is lubed up. Gonna set the valve cover on here. Make a big mess. Of course, I have the coil packs installed already, just to make it a little bit more convenient. But they'll probably have to come off later because they're gonna be in the way. We do put the intake on, I think. Maybe. It does look like GM intended for you to be able to take these off with the coil packs installed. But I don't know why. Other than it's handy. Get a couple of these going. Then we'll come back and torque them. And of course, thanks to my friend here for the use of his beautiful Milwaukee tools. Sure beats slumming it.
Not sponsored by Milwaukee.
Unless
not
they
yet. Not yet. Unless they really want to.
If Milwaukee wants to sponsor us, valve rocker arm cover. Okay, 106-inch valve, which is exactly what I have it set to. You know, should just.
It's the old 8.83333.
Trust the plan. Seems like a lot for these. This is not. It doesn't have to be that tight, but who's to argue with General Motors? And I mean, by General Motors, I mean a forum post by some random person. I don't even know their username, but they posted on the forum that it was 106 inch-pounds. And there's really just no reason to look into that.
Well, as a forum, and they didn't get hated on endlessly by all the replies, therefore it must be okay.
Yeah, you actually have to look into the post to know that, instead of just looking at the headline on Google and calling it a day.
I scrolled 2 comments down, and he wasn't getting roasted, so it's got to be right.
I can't argue with that logic. Click. Click. What else we got on our build list today? Let me check my list. Check my Lisp. Fingerprint scissors doesn't work. Gloves. Let's see, valve covers are done. Got the coolant crossover to install. Let me snag that real quick. I just seen that a few minutes ago.
Just do a sweeping shot of the garage showing where the parts have been stored in the back of the garage behind the 68C10 project that this engine is not going in.
Maybe.
No, temporarily, because we only have one engine stand.
It is going to go in a 72 C10 if everything goes to plan. And then the engine that's in the 72, which is a 350 small block, hopefully will be going in to the 68 after the small block engine gets a little bit of love. So this guy, just to put it right on over the paint, I'm sure that probably won't make it leak at all. No idea. And then I got a couple different bolts here in my bag, but I wasn't sure which ones are the right ones. I think it's these. Those look right. They're threading right in. Treading right in, as you can see. Real smooth. I'll just get the impact out. Everybody look away really quick. And we'll get that tightened down.
It's a weak impact. Got the 3/8 drive.
3/8 drive Milwaukee. Not
Short-
sponsored by Milwaukee.
The short neck.
Yep. These got plenty of juice in them. That is plenty of torque.
I think that
Put those
one's
in.
rated at, what, 35 maybe?
That is
Which
plenty.
is more than you want. So.
I'm gonna say I looked this up, and then it's 106 inch-pounds. Look at that, 106. Click. Look at that was in shot, in frame for these fellers. What else we got? Water pump. Great. So for our water pump, a labeled parts bag, but we do have again our Mr. Gasket seals. There's a theme here. The theme's Mr. Gasket, not sponsored. Yet. We have a professionally remanufactured water pump going on. It's actually a Gates pump. Long story, it's really short. It came on the engine. I'm putting it back on. That's the end of the story. It wasn't very long. And I'm not sure how these seals go. I've not done an LS water pump before. I have a feeling though they kind of go like that. And like that.
They look identical, right?
They do look identical. I see they have 2 rectangular holes and 1 round hole, so I'll start with the bolt that has the round hole. And get that sorted on the pump, and then we should be able to get it threaded into the block. This one might be a little bit more difficult to see, so I'm trying to put these gaskets on the water pump here. Just bear with me. Again, this is not meant to be a instructional guide on how to do these. It's more of an entertainment factor type thing. Because if you guys are taking advice from us, it's not looking good for your build.
You gotta have something to do while you're sitting on the couch eating your Doritos. You know, watch people, build something and hope and pray that it works later.
Yeah, it's kind of like all the excitement of doing your own build without the cost and the constant fear of it not working out. If the cost is a lot. If you're not worried about the money, you already wrote the money off, fine. You can sleep.
Then again, if you're not worried about the money, you're probably paying a professional to do this.
Yeah. And they might even do it correctly. I've had a lot worse. We also got our fire alarm bell here. So in case there's any problems, just ring that bell. Ring that bell for the complaint hotline. Water pump torque spec, made up, on the fly. Water pump bolts first pass, 11 foot-pounds. Water pump bolts final pass, 22 foot-pounds. That's
Okay.
interesting. I believe it. It's kind of a weird one to get bolted up, but that's Jags that says that. Summit says the exact same thing. 11 and then 22 to finish it up.
Ship it.
You can ship that. Not to your location. What is 11 times 12? Go.
Math. It's hard.
M-A-T, that's not a number. It's not dialed into the torque wrench.
Well, 10 times 12 is 120, so 132.
132. That's your final answer. So turn your inch torque wrench to 132. That's going to be your first pass on the water pump. And then switch back to your foot-pound torque wrench. Assuming you guys have different sizes like I do. Dial it into 22, and that's going to be your second pass. And I'm alternating this bolt just to try to spread it out as much as I can. I'm actually going to do 3 passes just to really take it easy on this since it's a used setup. There we go, it's 22, 22, ring the bell. All right, those are all 22. Those are all 22. Water pumps installed. The last piece I got is this bracket for your power steering pump and your alternator. Power steering pump's removed from the bracket at the moment. May want to put it back in before I put the bracket on. I'm not sure how people do that, if they swap them with it in the bracket or not in the bracket. Let me know. The only problem with putting this guy on is my bolts, my longer bolts that hold this on. They're in the engine stand right now, holding the engine stand on. Fortunately, I have 2 of these, so I'm hoping that my second one will have the bolts I'm looking for, but there's no guarantee. So I'm gonna look for those really quick. We ended up painting all the bolt holes on this head because we just painted the whole head, didn't really tape anything off. So all these bolt holes now have paint in them. And this is where I need to mount this power steering pump. And I don't want to mess up these aluminum heads. So I'm going to use these thread chases set. We'll put a link in the description about what set it is. I do not remember. The How to Motorcycle Repair channel, that guy turned me on to this thread chase set in one of his videos. He used it for his as LS as well. It's just like almost like a tap, but there's no conical tip. It's just a bolt with 4 notches cut in the sides, and it's hardened. So it lets you get in and clean out dirty threads before you put in your actual fastener, prevent an issue. So we'll just gently run that in with impact tools and run it back out. And just like that, we have a nice clean hole. Look at it compared to one of these that's full of paint. And all that gunk just falls out. We'll blow it out with some air too, just to make sure it's clean. But now when we go to put our actual bolts in, we're not gonna have to worry about cross-threading or pulling out the threads with the aluminum or anything weird like that. Having to do helicoils on aluminum, it really sucks. Especially on a cylinder head. I mean, granted, this is the outside of the cylinder head, so it wouldn't be the end of the world, but having a helicoil block or something, that sucks. That's a time cert, bad time. They should probably start calling those bad time certs. Yeah, I wish you guys could see the amount of junk falling out of these holes when this backs out. I don't know if it's showing up for you on the camera, but you can see the amount of debris that's coming out. it's not just paint. There's also probably 25 years of grease and rocks and other things that have gotten in there, got trapped. I mean, they take some torque to put in. And then there's all that debris. What a mess. If it's really bad, work the tap in and out a few times. Try to get the debris to come out. Don't just try to pack it further into the hole if it's really tight. There we go. Again, all that crud. I know those threads look beautiful in there. I know it sounds like we're stripping them or cross-threading them, or it's not, it's just debris. The last one is down here. There we go. So now we have all clean holes we're ready to mount to without taking a chance of stripping one of them out. We're going to wrap up by blowing those out really quick. We already did some of this off camera before you guys saw it to get some of this dust that's just shooting right at your lens. But these are all blown out now. So is this one down here. So we're ready to get the bracket and vent the sheet metal for the C10. What I was saying was, the other thing that's important about having these holes clean is that this piece is going to form your electrical ground to the alternator. The alternator sits up here, and the case of the alternator is what you call your true ground. So this bracket, these surfaces have been cleaned off. There's no paint on them. The alternator has the same setup. These tabs have been cleaned on the alternator, so that they're able to make a good connection against this bracket. And since this was done a few weeks ago, I'll probably touch these up with sandpaper before I put the alternator in, just to make sure the aluminum is as clean as it can be, because it does oxidize immediately in the atmosphere. These bolts from the bottom of the head, and you can see I cleaned off these as well, are going to form that ground into the block from the alternator. So if you're going to use your block as a ground, which most people do, they ground out to the block from their battery and to their chassis, this is part of that ground, getting from the alternator into the block. So it's important that those are clean, the back of this is clean, and these holes are clean, so that the bolt makes a good connection for you. And also, a thing to remember is that this is aluminum, the head's aluminum, the bolts are steel, and there's electricity flowing through them. So you'd expect to get galvanic corrosion on these. It probably would be wise to put a little bit of like an anti-seize type compound on these bolts, but look at what we found when we took them out from the factory. Nothing. And because they are part of that connection, I'm gonna leave them this way. I don't know if it's the right thing to do, but it's the way that GM did it. So we're gonna do it the same way and just hope that they did it for a reason and not just because it saved them 50 cents on thread compound.
And that this particular engine wasn't built on a Friday?
Yeah. Get these all lined up. I'll run these in with the impact. 37.38 foot-pounds. I would about say that's as tight as I'd like to get these, since they're going into aluminum, at least these three on top. That bottom one that goes into the steel block, you'd give it a couple extra uggas. Just because you're not going to strip out the block, but. All right, it's really starting to look like an engine now with all this bracketry assembled. So we got the coolant crossover installed, the water pump installed, a power steering pump brackets installed. Last thing I have for today is the adapter for the coolant temp sensor. So like I said previously, this engine is going to be going into a 1972 C10. I'm going to try to retain as many of the factory gauges as possible. We ended up getting that oil pressure adapter, so I could run the factory oil pressure gauge in the C10. This adapter, hopefully, is going to allow us to run the factory water temperature sensor as well. I've seen some people online that found from like a 99 Firebird a 3-wire water temp sensor for the driver's side. It's got 2 wires, like a ground and a 5-volt signal for the Holley Terminator ECU, so what we're going to be using, or the factory ECU if you're using that. And then the 3rd wire is like a 1-wire temperature sensor signal for an older style gauge that the Firebird used. In this case, instead of spending $35 on a sensor, this is $5 from eBay. And supposedly it'll thread in here where this plug is and allow us to run a older style GM 1-wire water temp sensor on the block over here. And assuming this fits and doesn't hit my heater core box. That way we'll be able to take the original wiring and just connect it up to the original sensor even. It'll thread into the back of here. We'll have our 1-wire temp sensor on this side, our electronic ECU temp sensor on that side, and then electronic oil pressure up here and mechanical oil pressure down at the block-off plate for the oil cooler. And then if you did in the future want to run an oil cooler, obviously just get the right kind of plate for it. We do have the factory one for the LQ4, but it's just not going to work out in the C10 the way that it's laid out, and I really don't think it's that important because this thing's not going to have gobs of horsepower or a turbo or anything like that. This original one looks like it has some thread sealant on it, or it could just be dried up coolant. I'm guessing it's thread sealant that's on there.
Looks like it. Yep.
The new one just has this aluminum crush washer. We could throw some blue Loctite on as a thread sealant, or some, I'll throw some RTV on here just to get a little bit of thread sealant going on. So on a normal thread, like a pipe thread fitting, they're tapered. You don't need to use any thread sealant. This to me looks like a metric fitting that is not tapered. So I'm just going to add a little bit of black RTV to try to seal it. Hopefully that does the job. It's probably not supposed to have RTV on it, but I'm not going to tell if you guys don't. And this is going to get torqued down to torque spec. It's definitely a number. It's greater than 1. It's less than 1,000. That is just a little bit too big. I got my favorite size around. It's the Crescent, but the Crescent really likes to mar up these aluminum fittings. Now I'm sure this is metric, but this 7/8 socket, it just seems to fit right on. Just not on the extension. And we'll just torque that down to click till your wrist starts to kind of hurt right through here. That's when you know that this has been torqued to spec. And again, hopefully this fits. The GM coolant temp sensor is going to stick out another 1/2 inch or so, and then there's a wire connection on the other end. So hopefully that works with our setup. If not, I guess we'll take it out, put the plug back in. We'll save that. I would like to have the gauge on the dash working for coolant temp, but the last thing I need to do probably is behind these paper towels. Let me move you a little bit. Behind these paper towels in the intake runners, There's still some carbon sitting back there that I'd like to get out so it doesn't get in on the first start. I think we'll probably do that in a later video. We'll get these cleaned out, do the old Volkswagen zip tie port cleaning method. If you guys haven't seen that, you just stick a bunch of zip ties in a drill and they go around in there and clean the carbon for you. And we'll blow those out just to make sure that there's no carbon going in on the first start. And before you do that, make sure your valve's closed in that cylinder. You're not just run it down into the cylinder because the valve's open. So double check that. You can only do half of them at a time. Then you come back to the other half. Other than that, I mean, we're getting real close here to having a running engine that we can break in. Like I said, in the meantime, it sounds like we're gonna stick it into our 68 C10 here just to hold it. And we'll mount the transmission up to the same stand. Transmission's gonna get some cleaning, fluid change, new filter, that sort of thing. Nothing crazy, we're not rebuilding a 4L80. We're just cleaning it, making it look new, like this oil pan. It'll look, new. Thanks.